In my last video, I shared a letter to my son, a goodbye, not because I stopped loving him, but because I had to protect my own peace after years of rejection. And as hard as that was to share, today's story is even harder. So this story is about my daughter Jakil and what it feels like to finally reconnect with your child and only to realize that they're a stranger. Before I go into that, I have to give you some context. I was the scapegoated child in my family. My father scapegoated me since I was little. And my ex, who alienated me from my children, made a deal with my father that he would allow my father and his family to see my children only if my father agreed not to allow me to see the children, and he agreed to that. So for years, not only was I alienated from my children, but my father participated in that alienation. He had a relationship with my children and used that power over me because I tried to stay away from my father because of everything he had done. But because he still had a hold on my children, that was still like a little hold that he had on me. Over the years, I would always say to my dad, why are you involving yourself with this? Why would you participate in this? And he would say to me, well, if I'm the only one that's allowed in, how are you going to get in? And I believed that, but that was never his intention, was to get me in. It was just to continue to control me. But anyways, I digress with that situation. So anyways, I eventually reconnected with my daughter through my father. And that led to one of the most painful experiences that I've had in this journey. So my grandfather was turning 100. This would have been in maybe 2020. No, this was in 20. Okay, I had to collect my thoughts. This was in 2011, because my grandfather died when he was 104 and he died in 2015, so I had to calculate that in my brain. Yeah, so they were planning this big birthday party in Brooklyn, New York. At the time, I was living in Kansas City and commuting. So I used to work on an oil refinery in Fort McMurray, Alberta. And so I would fly out of that refinery every 2 weeks and spend a week in Kansas City. So on my off week, my 1 week off, I was going to drive, it was I think 20 hours. It was really far, from Kansas City to Brooklyn, New York. And the plan was to surprise my children with me being there. So my dad said he wasn't going to tell them that I was going, and nobody knew I was coming. And so I was expecting this great reunion. And at this time, so 2011, between 2004, 2011 is when the amount of time I hadn't seen them at this point. So my husband, my daughter, and myself, we did the 20-hour trip to Brooklyn. I thought this would be, the icebreaker. Maybe seeing me in person would stir up an emotion in them. Oh my God, my mom, I haven't seen you in so many years. And anyway, so when I got there, my daughter and my son, they refused to speak to me. They sat beside my stepmother. My stepmother, of all people in the world. It's the same woman who had been very cruel and damaging to me for years. And they hovered over her like she was their safe space. They wouldn't talk to me. They wouldn't acknowledge me. And they wouldn't even take a picture with me. I wanted to. There was a professional photographer there. They wouldn't even take a picture with me. With their sister, they had met their sister at that point, but I wasn't there when they met her. My daughter got dropped off to a place where they were, and they spent maybe the day with her one time. And And so after all the hours that I spent on the road, and I mean, I didn't care. It was all worth it for me. But at the end of it all, they didn't even speak to me. Literally, I called my son. He just kept walking away from me. It was really disappointing. You know, imagine being treated like that by your own children. You hadn't done anything to them, nothing at all. So that was the first reunion. So from 2004 to 2011, that was the first time I had seen them. And that was the moment I started to understand something that you don't prepare yourself for. That when you finally get the chance to see your children again after they've been alienated from you for an extended period of time, they may not come back to you as the people that you once knew. That hurt in a way that I couldn't imagine. I didn't know that it was possible for your children to just discard you. I didn't think it could happen, but it is possible. So that's part one of, or maybe I guess part two of my story. I mean, if you were a scapegoated in your family, there were so many twists and turns of this story. I didn't even know where to start. I just figured I'd start here. But I'll be back with part two of the story to continue about what happened to me after I became alienated from my children in 2004, and just my story and my journey at being a scapegoated child. But I have finally found my freedom and my happiness and my peace, and I'm sharing my story because I want others to know that there is peace after pain, this type of pain. Even if you don't get your children back, you can heal from this. You know, you can find happiness again. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. Welcome to my channel. I'm a work in progress. I don't know how this is going to evolve, but just me doing this alone is a huge challenge because it took me forever to do this. It was timing. I just didn't know where to start, but I started, and I feel happy about that. And you can let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'll try to answer. Enjoy your day. Have a happy, blessed Sunday.